Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I am one of your intrepid hosts. My name is John Puma, and I am the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord, that fun place to hang out and talk about sake. And on this show, where we feature many luminaries, including Sake Samurai, I am the Sake Otaku.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand. Hey, John.
Tim, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
You know how it is. Another week and another episode, and
Yes.
we're living the dream. We're having a good time here. We're getting to share our love of sake every week.
We sure
are. And having a good time doing it.
And today is just us, no guests.
Yeah. It's weird sometimes when it's so quiet. It's we don't have to do any intros for people. We know who we are. It's great.
Yes.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and if I am, that was a great time to tell me, that we are getting back to one of our series that we haven't touched on in a little bit.
Yes, we're going to be looking at sake vessels again this week. Our series on sake cups and sake wares. And we have a fun one. This is one I've been looking forward to.
And I think this is one that there's a lot of, how do I want to put this? I think there's a lot of intrigue around this vessel. I think a lot of people hear about it and they find it very interesting, especially when they first see somebody using it. And also a little bit of confusion comes from seeing it.
Yes.
And I think that this is going to be very informative for a lot of our listeners.
I will say this is a vessel that even when I just started drinking sake, I remember seeing it out and about at restaurants. And it's something, this is a vessel you will not see in other types of restaurants. This is like something you'll see in Japanese restaurants.
This is most definitely a Japanese focused, a sake focused vessel.
Yes. So today we are taking on the topic of sake masu. M-A-S-U, masu.
Right. And that is the box.
Yes. So, John, for our listeners who may not know what a masu is, can you describe what typically you would see if you saw a masu on a table at a Japanese restaurant?
So, masu is a small box, a cedar, usually wooden box. Oftentimes these days you'll see them as plastic boxes as well. And when you see these at sake bars and izakayas, you may often see them put down, and sometimes the server will put a glass in the box and then pour the sake into the glass and sometimes overflow it into the box. You may also see people just pour sake directly into the box and sort of sip it out of that and wonder, wait a minute, how are they supposed to drink sake out of a square? But that's definitely something we're going to go over. And
wow, you've covered everything.
But no, there's a lot to this. There's this depth here. I'm just getting the surface. I'm getting the surface level description.
Yeah. It's a cedar wooden box, open on the top, and it's about 3.5 inches wide, 2 inches tall, square. And yeah, the wood that is most often used for these is a Japanese cedar. So it's a fragrant wood. And that is the most traditional and most common type of masu that you're going to see. And as you mentioned, John, these come in plastic, glass. I've even seen ceramic masu as well. So,
really?
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever seen glass or ceramic, but that sounds really cool.
Yeah. This box shape is traditional in Japan.
Right. Now, why? What's the story with the box? Exactly. We know they use it. We know it gets utilized in sake. We know that we see it in sake bars and izakayas. But why?
Yeah. So the box shape is actually a descendant of a measuring cup.
Interesting.
So we've talked about measurements and serving sizes on the podcast before, I think, and there's a serving size called a go. One go.
Yes, we have definitely talked about the go.
Enjoy the go. A go is a single serving of sake in Japan. And when you order sake in Japan, very often you'll order it by the go, 1 go, 2 go, 3 go. And it's about 6 ounces of sake or 180 milliliters. So the internal volume of a standard traditional Masu box is 180 milliliters, again, about 6 ounces. So this I've been told this originated as a measurement for rice. Oh. So when you would buy rice or if you were paid in rice, they would scoop out using the Masu as a measuring cup. And Masu is a measurement not only of liquid for sake, but also for rice. So it's kind of a descendant of a measuring cup for purchasing rice. And they had a lot of them sitting around, and it morphed into a drinking vessel. So traditionally made from cedar, and that cedar really does affect the flavor of the sake.
Yeah, I kind of like that. We went from measuring rice with this and now having, rice alcohol. Liquid rice, yes.
Now I
think that's fun. I like that.
Yeah. And John, you mentioned how to drink from a square box.
Yeah. That is, I think that when people first see the Masu, that's the first thing that pops in their head is like, well, that's interesting. How are you supposed to drink out of that?
Very carefully is the answer.
Yes.
I do want to give everyone a warning, though.
Uh-oh.
Masu made of wood are very, very hard to keep sanitized and clean.
It is. I mean, it's wood.
It's wood.
It's not meant to yeah.
And it's not finished with anything. Like the Masu that I have a brand new Masu with me that was given as a gift, and it has never been used. But the wood is not finished in any way. There's no wax coating or anything on here. It's raw wood. So if you go to a restaurant and they serve you out of a wooden Masu that's been put through the dishwasher a whole bunch of times, I always, when I see that hit the table, I'm like, no, bring me a wine glass, please. I don't like to drink out of used wooden Masus. But you mentioned they make them out of lacquer and plastic. And we talked about the other, there's glass and ceramic as well. Now those you can sanitize very easily, and those are really fun to drink out of.
Yeah, but unfortunately, and it's something that you had pointed out earlier, is that when you do go with the plastic or the lacquer or anything like that, you are depriving yourself of one of the factors that come in with it when you have it out of the cedar Masu. And that is that the cedar really does influence the flavor of the sake you're having. It's primarily in the aroma, but the aroma is going to influence how you experience it.
Absolutely.
And so it's a different experience than just having the sake out of any other kind of vessel. Because if you have it out of glass, the glass isn't imparting any kind of aroma to it, hopefully. But the Masu very much is, and it's going to impart a little bit of that cedar to it. And it's gonna, it's kind of like a aromatic cocktail almost, because it is changing it up and it's mixing with the sake's aroma.
Yeah, Japanese cedar I've read that it's actually a relative of the redwood tree, and it is a very oily type of wood, and those oils get into the sake and really influence that flavor and aroma. I will tell you where most Japanese people are going to see a Masu like this at a wedding. I think if you talk to the average Japanese person and ask them where they got their last Masu or last time they saw a Masu, these are often made and then printed with something like they print the wood so that there's like, if you have a wedding or a celebration, you would make fresh, clean masus for everybody at the party. And then when you pour the sake or it comes out of the barrel, everyone drinks from their own clean, fresh masu. And then you take it home as a party favor. So that's awesome.
If I recall correctly, you had masus at your wedding.
I did have masus at my wedding. I didn't.
I do remember something from your wedding.
I didn't have time to get them branded, so they were blank masus. But so everyone got a fresh, clean masu, and there was sake being poured into them. And I wanted to bring that element of Japan to my wedding, and I thought it was really fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. I had a great time.
Good. So, John, I've got some masus here. How about you?
I also, coincidentally, who knew? I have some masus, and I also have a wine glass.
Okay. I have a fresh, clean wooden Japanese cedar masu, and I have a plastic masu. Mm-hmm. And we have a sake, and we're going to do a little taste test.
Yeah, we're going to drink out of all three of these vessels. So while we're preparing the sake, Tim, I have a question for you as a sake educator. So we often, when we encounter the masu, we also encounter the glass inside the masu and the pour over and all of that. Could you let our listeners know, like, what's the story with that?
Yes. So there's a pour over tradition in Japan. Some restaurants in the States do this as well. You'll get a saucer or a masu. They'll put a glass inside of it. They'll pour sake, and then they'll overflow the glass into the saucer or into the masu. And the word always is that this is a sign of hospitality, and they're giving you more than you paid for, and they're literally overflowing your cup as a sign of welcome and prosperity. Some people may think this is an ancient Japanese tradition, but I've actually read that this custom was invented in the post-war period. So
really?
Yes.
Wow.
And when salarymen started going out to izakayas after work in the post-war period, this way of overflowing the glass started at that time. So this is not an ancient Japanese tradition at all.
Wow, that is so interesting. I did not see. This is something I did not know.
Okay.
I know what the pouring over why, but I also assumed it was older than post-war. That's very fascinating.
Yeah, that's what I've read. That's what I think the scoop is. And the second question that always goes along with this is, how do you drink it? How do you drink it? You've got a masu filled with sake, and inside the masu is a glass filled with sake. What on earth are you supposed to do? So, John, how do you handle this situation?
So what I like to do when I have mine is I will take the whole thing together, the masu with the glass in it all together, and I will first just sip out of the glass a little bit just to make sure nothing's going anywhere. And then once I have that done, I've got a little bit of clearance. I'm going to pull out the glass and I'm going to sip over the box with the glass. And then the real big question is, well, what do I do when I run out of sake in my cup? How do I get the masu sake back into the cup? And that is, I will take the cup out of the masu and I will pour via the corner the rest of the sake into the glass. I prefer to drink it out of the glass generally.
Yes.
And so I will generally pour it in.
Yeah, that sounds like an A+ procedure to me.
I'm glad it's approved.
I pull the glass out of the masu. I'll sip on it until there's enough room that I can pour the dripped sake into the glass, and then I drink out of the glass. That's I think the way that is a good way to handle that situation.
That's the right way to go.
I think so.
It's funny. There's an izakaya that I like to go to in Tokyo, and I know you've been there too. And it's in Shinjuku on the west side of the station, and it's called Donjaka. And at Donjaka, they are very generous, and they know that the idea of the generous pour is kind of, it's expected that it's going to fill up the box. So what they do is they put the glass in, they pour in the glass, fill the glass, keep pouring, and then fill the masu. And then when the sake begins overflowing and hitting the table is when they stop. And that is the generous pour.
That's an aggressive pour.
Yes. And I go to this place like every year, and it happens every year. So it wasn't like this like one-off. It's such a weird thing. I've never seen another place do that before, where they're like, when it hits the table, that's the generosity. And in my mind, I appreciate the gesture, but they're wasting sake because I can't drink that.
Yes. That is not sake brewer approved.
No, I would imagine it's not. But yeah, so we have our vessels. Let's talk about our sake. The sake is from the brand Urakasumi, which is a familiar brand, I think, to some of our listeners. And the name of the brewery is Saura Shuzo in Miyagi Prefecture. And this is a honjozo using mana musume rice. And Tim, I am unfamiliar with this rice. This is a new rice to me. We'll have to chat about that in a bit. The yeast is apparently just an in-house yeast. The sake milling percentage of that mana musume is 65% remaining. Alcohol percentage is 15.5. Sake meter value is a plus 5.5. So looking a little bit on the dry side here. And the acidity is 1.2. Now they advertise this as a honjozo karakuchi. So they're saying this is dry.
This is their dry style. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I've actually never tasted this particular sake from them before, so I'm excited.
Yeah, so you mentioned this mana musume rice. I don't know a lot about it myself, but I know that they use this rice for their junmai as well. So this is a rice variety that, if I had to guess, I would say probably comes from Miyagi Prefecture. And this is used for several of their sakes. So super, always excited to try a new rice variety. And Urakasumi is such a historic brewery. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years.
So breaking news, Mana Musume was apparently bred in 1997 in Miyagi and is a brewery rice, is a sake rice, but it's also an eating rice.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a switch hitting rice. And yeah, so that's exciting. You don't get that a lot. I think that's really interesting. I think that's a fun thing when they can make a rice that can do more than one role. It really ups the value to the rice farmer.
Yeah, and my takeaway when I hear that is it's an eating rice and a sake rice. Usually when I experience that on the palate, that has a more robust flavor to it. So usually it's going to imply to me a little bit more of a ricey flavor. So that's what I'm expecting. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I think that Urakasumi traditionally gives you a little bit of rice on the palate when you're drinking their sake. So it'll be very interesting to see if this one carries on that kind of tradition. So I think without any further ado, let's get our bottles open. First, going to put some of this in the wine glass. So I put some of this in the wine glass just so we can get a little bit of a baseline. This is, how we typically experience our sakes, and this is going to tell us how we would typically experience this sake. And Tim, I'm swirling this around a little bit, and the aroma is telling me that we're probably right about that
ricey
rice flavor.
Yeah, it's ricey, refined but ricey. I'm taking a sip. Very smooth, dry overall, but it has a little bit of heft to it. This is like a really great dry food sake, I think.
Oh yeah, this desperately wants some food, but it is nice. It's tasty.
Yeah.
It is still very drinkable without.
Yeah.
And smooth, as you mentioned.
Yeah, smooth, really classic dry sake. It lives up to the Karakuchi moniker for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, John, I can't wait any longer.
Okay, our cedar is next.
Yep, so our wooden Masus, and I am ready to inaugurate this. So I'm going to go ahead and pour some of my Urakasumi Honjozo.
I got to say, this box smells amazing.
Okay, mine smells great too.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, All right.
All right.
So this is a wide open box. This is not like a wine glass where the aroma is focused. So it may be a little more difficult.
It's certainly tricky.
It smells good. It smells woody.
I have to say that for me, the aroma is somewhat dominated by the box.
Totally.
Like I'm getting cedar. I'm getting that aroma on it.
Yes. All right.
It is overshadowing the sake a bit.
Yes. When the wood gets touched by the sake, it really brings out the aroma of the wood.
Yeah.
So where it's getting wet, that's really where the aroma compounds are going to come off the wood and really bring that aroma forward. All right. So let's go to the corner.
Yes.
Sip out of the corner of the box.
Yep. Any corner, guys. Doesn't matter which.
Wow.
Tim, I think I like this better out of the box.
It's like a Taru light.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's got more it's brighter. Is that the word I want to use?
Okay, so we have to mention Taru sake, which we featured on the show before. We had a whole episode about Taru sake. That's cedar barrel aged sake. Usually they age about 2 weeks in a cedar barrel, and that has a very strong cedar aroma. Now, this has been in contact with cedar for about 60 seconds.
Yes.
And there is that cedar aroma, but it's a whisper. It's really nice.
The sake becomes so clean and light. The aroma becomes very woody, but the sake taste becomes so clean.
I couldn't agree more, John. The aroma is dominated by the wood smell, but it's just a whisper on the palate. It's just a hint of that woodiness. And I really like it. I like it.
Yeah. I think that whisper on the palate is just enough to make the entire taste so much lighter and just more subtle almost. It's so interesting. It is palpably different.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be hard to top that.
We've got one more. We have our plastic Masu.
Yes. I'll put a little bit in there. Into the plastic Masu.
Okay. So we have, let's describe this for our listeners. So this is a black plastic Masu with a reddish lining to it. Same dimensions as the wooden one, but it's just made out of plastic resin.
Yeah, it's just made out of plastic. Yeah. Now, the first thing I'm noticing is, as you pointed out, this is not a wine glass. It is not easy to bring the aroma up to your nose.
There's almost no aroma, right?
It depends on the angle, but if I put my nostrils, I have a pretty big nose too. If I put my nostrils over the corner, I can get kind of exactly what I got from the wine glass.
Really?
So I can get some of that ricey note. But it's a challenge. It's not easy.
The surface area is so much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that comfortable putting a corner of a piece of plastic, up to your nose.
You have to be careful, John. The workers' comp at Sake Revolution is very minimal. I don't want any
really?
Masu accidents.
Oh, uh-oh. All right. So let's give it a taste.
All right.
And this is very in line with the wine glass experience.
Yes.
It's not as aromatic, obviously, and that's going to influence the taste a little bit, but it's a tiny bit more subtle, I guess. But it's not like I kind of really like this out of the wooden Masu. I think that's, for me, the way I enjoyed this sake the most. And of course, this is this sake without any food. And we talked about earlier, this sake is practically begging for some kind of rich, maybe some good meat, red meat with this.
Yeah. It's really shocking. I enjoyed the wooden Masu as well, and I was sure that I would not like it. Like I came in thinking I was not going to like it. And
we're wasting our time with this.
It's
wooden
really
Masu.
lovely. It's really nice. And the plastic Masu is fun, but there's no complexity to the sake. It tastes the flattest out of all of them.
It does. It really does. But I think that the plastic Masu, for the most part, is there for your overpour, for your apparently only 70-year tradition. Which is, hey, you know what? 70-year tradition is not bad. But yeah, I think that you're right. The plastic isn't bringing a lot to the table here.
Yeah, it doesn't help the aroma get to your nose, and so much of what we experience as flavor really comes through our olfactory system, through the nose. Mm-hmm. And the wine glass really helps channel that. And the Masu has its own unique experience. So the kind of neutral plastic Masu really allows the most aroma to escape. And it's really fun to drink out of. But I think as far as giving the sake a boost of some kind, it's really not the most dynamic. What do you think?
Yeah, it is just, it's really interesting to me that this ended up being our preferred method, but it's, we're 100% in agreement on this. It is the most enjoyable way of the three we've done today.
Yeah, this Masu is really super fun. Way more fun than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I've had sake from a Masu before.
Well, we walked into this with you being you were a bit of a Masu hater when we started this.
Well, yeah.
But
in a restaurant, I'm a wooden Masu hater. But at a wedding, at a party, when you get a fresh Masu, I'm a Masu lover. Officially.
So this was fun, and Tim, I like the episodes where you get thrown for a loop a little bit. Where you get surprised, and I don't get to see you surprised very often. So this was nice. This was very pleasant.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how Urakasumi was gonna marry with the Masu, but having a fresh Masu just made all the difference in the world, and it really brings me back to all the Japanese parties and weddings I've been to, where you get this very distinct Japanese cedar aroma. And so many memories are attached to smells and aroma. It's really funny. Like I'm thinking about all these really fun events I've been to where they've served sake from Masu as a celebratory thing. And it's really bringing me back. It's really fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And Tim, thank you so much. This series on vessels has been really informative for me. Yeah. I don't, honestly, as a sake drinker, I don't think about the vessels a whole lot. I really focus on my wine glasses, and I think I get a great experience from them. But going through this with you has been so interesting for me. And, every one of them, I get a little something out of it. And so this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again for that.
Yeah, well, thank you for tasting as always. And I think the vessels are really fun, especially this one, because as we mentioned at the beginning, this is a vessel that you're not going to see in any other restaurant.
No.
This is true Japanese culture in a cup, which I love. Yep. So,
and you're going to experience this if you're going to have a lot of sake at restaurants. This is going to come your way one day.
Yep.
And I hope that we armed you with some knowledge for that eventuality.
All right. Well, John, great to taste with you. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. And I also want to especially say hello and thank you to all of our patrons. We have a wonderful community at Patreon who support us, and we appreciate them so, so much. If you would like to learn more about supporting our show through Patreon, you can visit patreon.com/sakerevolution.
That is right. But apart from that, there are other ways you can support us. One of them is to review our show over on your podcast platform of choice, like iTunes or Stitcher, Spotify, whatever you're into. It gets the word out there, gets the bar raised. So please grab your Masu, and until next time, remember to keep drinking sake and
Kanpai.